学生们好, we have made it to our last lesson of Unit 1, and that is on series of transformations. Our learning target for our final lesson is I can identify the types of transformations that occurred. Notice that there's parentheses for types and transformations. That's because we're going to look at ones with one transformation and ones with more than one. The language objective, I can precisely explain and justify the transformations occurred. And there are 3 sentence frames that we will be using individually or together. The object is translated up, down, blank, and left or right, blank. The object is reflected over the line, blank, and the object is rotated blank degrees around the point, blank. We will have one essential question for lesson 5. How do we determine the transformations that occurred? So we might be wondering what transformations are. Translations, reflections, and rotations are all transformations. They are movements of figures on a graph. We have learned how to perform them, and now we will look into how to track their occurrences. So let's take a look at an example. Can you specify the transformation that occurred? We will be using this sentence frame for all of the exercises and our word bank. So an example here. Here's a picture of a transformation. We clearly see an original, A, B, C, D, E, and the image A prime, B prime, C prime, D prime, E prime. So what happened to get from the original to the image? An example of a response that I'm looking for is this is a rotation of 90 degrees counterclockwise around the origin because the figure turned in a circular motion. So that's an example. In the next few slides, you're going to take a look at a few exercises and determining the transformation that occurred there. Again, we're using the same sentence frame and the same word bank. And here are the 3 exercises for you to practice. Go ahead and pause the video. So for the first one, this is a translation of right 10 and up 1 because the figure shifted and orientation is the same. Recall that translations is the only one that keeps the orientation of the original exactly the same as it goes to its image. For the second one, this is clearly a reflection across the y-axis because the orientation is flipped over it. The third one is again a translation of right 6 and down 4 because the figure shifted and the orientation stayed the same. Here is the next set of exercises. Go ahead and pause the video. All right, so the first one is a rotation of 90 degrees counterclockwise around the origin because the orientation turned. Remember that the rotation, you always see a turning of the figure. If it was a translation, then you would see that the image would be exactly the same, but it is not. It is not flipped like you would see it in a reflection. And so, see that there's a turning, it has to be a rotation. The second one is a reflection across the x-axis because the orientation is clearly flipped over it. Last but not least, the last one is a rotation of 180 degrees, again because the orientation is turned. You might think that this one is a reflection and a translation at the same time, but looking carefully how the vertices are transformed, it would only work with a rotation. So now we've reached our first checkpoint. How can you tell the differences between the 3 transformations by looking at the image? So here is a sentence frame that you can use. While a translation is like blank, a reflection is like blank. Finally, a rotation is like blank. Again, you can use the words from the word bank to help formulate your thinking. And this is getting the idea of telling the different types of transformations by looking at them individually.